Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's Career Chat. I'm Krista Harmon with the Kent Intermediate School District's Career Readiness Department. I'm so glad to have you here today, and I especially welcome our guest, Ryan Struck-VanderHaak. He's a corporate recruiter, so we're going to learn about a different field in business so you can make some good decisions for yourself. So welcome, Ryan.
Hey, thanks, Krista.
So great to have you here today. Ryan has been a great support of our programming in the past, and we've worked together on a different way. Today, he's our guest, so it's going to be fun to interview you. So as we get started, Ryan, a lot of the young people like to know how our adults get from high school to the working world. So take us back to in high school. Did you think you would grow up to be a recruiter? Tell us how that went for you.
I did not, much like a lot of your other guests that I've seen on your other ones, I did not want to go into human resources as a middle schooler or a high schooler. And I don't blame anyone. I don't see a lot of TV shows about HR people or recruiting. And so my pathway getting here was kind of a discovery of sorts. If you would have asked me as a middle schooler what I thought I'd be doing, I thought I was going to be an architect at that point or an engineer. So it's really kind of a nice blessing that I'm working with those architects and engineers, but I am not one. I'm a human resources expert for them. So yeah, in middle school and high school, I even did a career study thing back at my school and studied about architecture. I did all the good things. I went and I shadowed an architect for a day, and he owned a small firm and it looked really exciting. And he was meeting with clients and doing all these great things. And then I was like, I'm going to go to a top tier university for architecture. And I visited a bunch of Ivy Leagues over in New England, University of Washington. I'm from the Seattle area. And ultimately, fortunately, this is why I love college visits in high school. I decided that those big schools that were great for reputation weren't great for me. So I took a risk and I went to a smaller school, Calvin University, which is actually how I ended up here in Grand Rapids. And I started in what they had was the pre-architecture program. And you're supposed to study there for 3 years, and then you transfer to the University of Michigan. Great architectural program. I loved Calvin too much to transfer. I did not want to go to the University of Michigan. I really liked a school of 4,000 people. I liked all the classes I was taking. And I also started shadowing and interning early in college and realizing I did not want to be an architect. That was partly because I think when you do a one-day shadow day, everybody's showing you the best part of the business. And when I was there, I'm like, oh, it's a lot of time sitting by a computer and designing. And I'm a pretty social person. And I'm like, I don't think I can be in a solitary job like that. And I actually came from a family of teachers. So I swore going to college, I'll never teach. And by my third year, I'm like, hey, maybe I should teach. And so, yeah, I'll show you. So I'll share my screen real quickly just to kind of show you what I've been involved in. I started out as a middle school teacher before becoming a corporate recruiter over at the Potter's House. I taught 8th grade. So if anybody in the group is an 8th grader, welcome. I'm glad you're here. And then after that, I got into missions and financial aid, and I worked for a couple of colleges in town. That was a great experience working with students. And what I realized out of that is I loved working with people, but I loved working with people as they went through that career path from middle school to high school to college, and then really entering the workforce world. And so then I became a corporate recruiter in human resources business expert and worked at 3 great companies in town. Innotech, it's a manufacturing automation firm out in Zealand. And then I worked at Pridgeon and Clay, great family-owned business here in Grand Rapids. And then I kind of landed at the dream spot where now I'm doing HR, corporate recruiting for architects and engineers and all the people that I kind of started studying, and I love what they do, but I actually get to work with them in an HR perspective and recruit them instead. Yeah.
So that's so great. And I love that you were able to share, that kind of progression of what you were thinking and how it evolved. And what I want young people to understand in the series specifically around business is that there's so many jobs under that umbrella, right? And so your part, for some students who may not know what human resources is, and even what admissions is, can you give us a little definition of what human resources is, and then really what a recruiter is too?
Yeah, actually, and I have a slide for that. I guess this is the teacher in me. Once I was a teacher, I always want a little bit. And I think part of this too is I'm a very visual learner. So I know we're talking a lot about stories, but I like to see something when I'm talking about things too. So human resources is all the different parts of a business that help equip the people. in a business. And people are probably the most costly part of any business, right? We have materials, we have different things that we pay for, but it's the salaries and the talent and the expertise of the people who work for a company that you really invest the most in. So HR, human resources, and I apologize, we often shorten that one to HR, has a lot of different facets. And so in human resources, typically when you enter it, you either become a generalist, which means you do a little bit of everything that I'm showing on the screen here, or you become a little bit more of a specialist. So a generalist in human resources, they do things like business management, helping the company grow, learning about employment law, making sure we are doing compliance. Then there's talent planning and acquisition. That's my sweet spot. That's kind of my depth spot. And that's things like recruiting, young talent programs, running internships or apprenticeship programs, onboarding orientation. But then there's also another sweet spot I love, which is learning and development. In HR, you can be helping with learning programs. So you're all in school and you're taking class and you're learning about different things. Once you get into the work world, it's no different. You're going to keep learning and keep growing. And that's an important thing in any business, is to constantly be learning. So we provide the best resources and the opportunities for people to develop their careers, leadership development, manager training. And then there's another part of HR. This is not my sweet spot, but it's total rewards. Those are the people who do things like payroll, making sure you get paid for your job, your benefits. What does it look like for healthcare, for wellness benefits, for counseling, all those things. And then there's another part. This is another one of my sweet spots, is employee relations and engagement. Now, this is the part that we don't always think of as the fun part of HR, and it's not always the part that's focused on, but it's things like health and safety compliance, employee and labor relations, performance management, discipline separations, and a really big one this year is diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's always been big in the human resources world, but I think especially in light of what we know about the world and making sure that our workplaces are more diverse, just, equitable, inclusive, that's a key. And then there's leadership and strategy. How do we help the business operate? What do we do about operations, metrics, organizational change? That's been a huge thing this year. We've moved to partly remote work, partly in-person work. So a huge part for HR is, how do we make sure people are safe wherever they're working? How do we make sure people are working well on their teams? How do we make sure they have the tools? How do we equip them to really do the work? We don't do the work, but we're that kind of the background to make sure the people doing the front end work do it really well.
Such an important role. And I guess I really want to just reinforce for young people, human resources, again, is an umbrella term. And I love the slide that you created for us, Ryan. And each of these can be a specialty. So if you are in a big company, you're going to be in just, the talent and planning acquisition part, or you're going to be just dealing with payroll and benefits. So for you young people, just know that as you look forward, you can get that general degree and you're going to be able to take it a lot of different places. So what kind of degree then did you end up with, Ryan, as you move from that kind of pre-architecture and consider teaching? What did you end up with after 4 years?
Yeah, that's a funny one, and I didn't make a slide for it. So by the end, I have a Bachelor of Arts degree with 5 focus areas. And I finished in 4 years and studied abroad twice and studied in another state for a bit too. So you can fit it in 4 years if you are someone like me, where I love to do a ton of things, stay super busy, do a lot of credits, stay involved in a lot of things, and plan well and negotiate well how to have the kind of credits. I was fortunate, Calvin University is a liberal arts school, so we had a really strong core curriculum, but my focus areas that have helped me are Spanish. So I was doing bilingual recruiting for quite a bit, and I was certified to teach it for a little bit. I didn't actually teach it in middle school. I got my teaching certification, so that was considered part of the plan minor. I had a fine arts program. I also had an international development program that's part of my study abroad, looking at things like that. And architecture, yeah, it was a pre-architecture program, and so I hope I got to 5 there. That's the problem. I was like, I had 5 different things. So, but if you look at it, it's a Bachelor of Arts with 5 specialty areas. And then I actually later, as I got really interested in things, I've taken master's coursework in organizational development and leadership. And so for me, looking back, one of the classes I think I wish I would have taken more of is psychology. That's actually Krista's degree, but yeah, psychology is great because it teaches people how people are wired, how they think. It's just a fascinating coursework. And if I have a piece of recommendation, sometimes you should study in college the courses you really love, just the courses that are intriguing, that are challenging, that make you think. You can take degrees, and there are colleges and universities that offer human resources degrees. A lot of people I know who get them are people who start working in human resources and then later go back and get their degree to get that expertise. So for instance, on my team, I have a team of 4 HR people I work with. One of our team members has a business and interior design degree. The other Another one, she has an accounting degree and she got into human resources and consulting. And the third one has a sociology and psychology degree with a business minor, and then I do. So none of us really have human resources degrees, but a very popular one in the area of human resources is things like psychology, business administration. But you know what? There's even a growing trend of people with just strong liberal arts degrees getting great jobs too. Things like history degrees, English degrees, communications. Those can also work really well in the human resources field. It's a lot more about competencies and what we do and how we're equipped to help people in human resources. Yep.
Yeah, that's so great. And students, I want you to know, I just met a teacher, a person this morning who's in HR. She was a teacher for 10 years and she got out of it and entered as an entry-level position as an HR assistant, and now she's in HR. So again, hear that there's lots of flexibility, that you don't have to have just that right degree, that if you study what you love, human interactions and mind, how we work in psychology or English, it's going to take you many places. So hopefully that's just helping you relax. But obviously, if you like the world of business, make it a business in psychology, right? Put it together. So you mentioned that you are in charge of some of the young talent programs, and that's kind of where I met you. So I do love your teacher's heart. And I love that you could be a teacher, but not be in the classroom. That's same with me. I was a certified teacher and I never want to be in the classroom. So young people, again, if you have a teacher's heart, you like to show people things, even his slides, right? Ryan's slides are great. Tell us, did you get to start kind of putting your own spin on some of the work that you do at Progressive AE because that is your heart? Or how does that your role evolve to really be passionate about it?
Yeah, it's interesting because one of the parts of human resources is we write people's job descriptions, right? And a job description is really just a tool that shows you the core parts of what you do in a job. It's not a contract and a list of what you have to do. It's an idea of what you're able to do so that we know what you're responsible to do. And then if you have other skills and talents, you can keep adding that. And that provides a lot of value to your business. So yeah, with my teaching background, when I got into human resources, they loved that I knew about things like learning and development and how the mind works and how to engage things. And so that became fun. So sometimes I facilitate live training. I do a lot of coaching one-on-one with individuals. If I'm doing career path planning, I'll meet with people who are trying to discern what kind of career do I want to go into? Do I want to go into more of a sales position or more of a support position? Do I want more of a technical role? And then I also help them find the tools and the types of training and registration and things that they can participate in. But a lot of that is helping that employee get driven for what they want to do. I also have a lot of other quirky skills. One of my first bosses called me a Renaissance guy. Like I could do a ton of different things. So when I've been in my roles and they found out I could do things, they're like, oh, you can lead that. So it's like, I remember a year ago when we were moving into the Zoom world, I was pretty good at running some Zoom meetings. And we ran a virtual shadow day with like 300 students when we had to cancel last year's Groundhog Shadow Day. And wouldn't you know, it went pretty well. We did all these breakout rooms and I co-hosted it actually with one of my architects and one of my civil engineers who just have great engagement, technology, interviewing skills, and they're just phenomenal co-hosts. Because of that, we started running senior night open house parties, like as an organization, not part of our business brand, right? We're architects and engineers, but we started consulting on some interesting things. And then they found out, oh, I could do website design. And we launched an intranet. And oh, you're good at video editing. And oh, you're good at some creative things. And you can write this, and you can write new employee articles. And you're pretty technically savvy. And this last year, we just decided to launch a new HR system, human resource. It's like a technology coding system. And we hired just a phenomenal person. She's our benefits expert, but also an HR person who was a human resources person who worked in an IT department. Fascinating overlap. So she has both this analytical mind of what is the programming and the codes like, but then what is it like to implement it for people? And she was a great find for our team. So we got to implement a new human resources system. We got to train people in it. We got to launch on that. And then there's a lot of just, compliance things that I have to do. Not all the parts of my job are fun, but I have to do things like review the employee handbook every year and make sure it's up to date. I have to do OSHA safety reports and make sure we have a safe workplace and we're reporting that back to the government. But if I look at the spirit of why I'm doing it, right, we're doing that because we really want a safe workplace, right? I do different reports and training grants and things like that because those are just things that interest me and then hopefully can provide value to my company. And that's a great thing too, finding training grants. Sometimes it costs a bit of money to have learning and training opportunities. If I can find grants and bring that into my company, then that's also helpful. helpful. And actually about the intern programs, that's something in my first thing, they're like, oh, we've got a bunch of college students. Can you kind of work with them? I'm like, sure. And they're like, oh, we might want to have some high school interns. I'm like, sure, let's bring it on, and pretty soon things started growing. And then I got on a toolkit kit for Talent 2025. It's this organization in West Michigan here about building great intern programs. And I helped other companies launch their intern programs. And we put together all these different resources for like, how do you run it? How do you help interns have housing? What do you do for community events, for service learning? And then actually built on a lot of my teaching and my college work, right? When you're in university, there's a lot about developing community, discerning calling, getting involved, connecting. And so we have just had a phenomenal internship program. I'll share a quick slide just so you can kind of see one of the things that's kind of cool on that is we've had interns from lots of different schools. So here's a little snapshot of the last couple of years of interns that we've had at Progressive AE. And that is one of the things I do love working with. Typically, in some of my past companies, I've even had human resources interns, and that'll be a college student who actually helped me run the internship program as a whole. And maybe we'll have 5, 10, 20 interns, and that college student can help lead and facilitate. And it's a great way for them to practice and put into effect those skills, and then see if they like it and see if they like all the parts of it. I've had HR interns. I had one who she went into human resources because she just loved people and never wanted to let anybody down. And this was not the place for her, because in human resources, you need to let a lot of people down. You can't give everybody a job. You have to discipline some people. You have to separate with some people when it's not working out. When they're not doing well enough and you've coached them through and you've worked with their manager, it doesn't always work. And she realized it was just tough on her to have to fire or terminate people or let people go or say no to candidates. And I've learned that I would love to hire everybody I meet, but I can't, and I would love for everybody to promote and work wonderfully well, but not everyone does. Sometimes people find it's a bad fit, and sometimes we have to help coach them into other fits. And so I call that kind of outplacement sometimes when we're coaching them at the end, like maybe we're not the place for them to work. How do I coach them and train them to get ready for the next place to work? And that's another fun thing too. With my summer interns, I get to train them on resumes, writing pain letters, how to connect with people on LinkedIn, and sometimes how to beat the system. So I'm part of the system, right? You have to get through me and my system in order to get a job in a company. But there's ways to kind of play around with the system and not, just to get to know the right people. And a big thing for that, though, is painting a really accurate picture of who you are and you taking the initiative so that they know you are going to be a valuable contribution to the company. I know it's tough. Sometimes you think, oh, maybe I should have my parent do it. Maybe my teacher should do it. They can be great allies. But ultimately, the more inquisitive you are and the better you present yourself, the more likely that a company is going to want to hire you. I have 2 7th grade sons, and they hear me say this all the time because I'm like, guys, how are you building your resume? What are you doing? And they're like, Dad, we're in 7th grade. Nobody builds a resume. I'm like, we can totally do it. And there's this funny LinkedIn recruiter dad video if you ever want to watch it. I think it's hilarious. My kids just roll their eyes when they see it because they're like, Dad, no one likes talking about their parent being in HR. And actually, truth be told, one of my kids was writing a career paper and didn't fully understand that I was in HR and wrote that I was an engineer in his job. And his brother, he's like, no, Dad's an architect. It's very clear. And I'm like, guys, you are both wrong. I am neither an architect or an engineer. I'm a recruiter. They're like, but you talk like an architect and an engineer. I'm like, I just show interest in people and I get to know them and I build that up. I'm like, but I did not finish my degree. I cannot call myself an architect or an engineer. I'm a person who gets to work with them.
You sound like a Renaissance man, though. I think that's a good title for you. Just your college degree alone shows what a Renaissance man you are. And when you were just sharing, training, coaching, including career coaching, coordination, planning, strategic thinking, all of it, Ryan, that's so fantastic. And I hope that's an encouragement to young people that it's not just linear. It's not just one thing. So many jobs, you can do so many things. So for those of you that have a teacher's heart and you like helping people, it can happen outside of a classroom. And you're such a great example of that, Ryan. What would you say when you think about your day to day, is your favorite part of your job, and what's your least favorite?
Well, my favorite part's what we're doing right now. I love talking with and interviewing. It's just something I love on the back end, getting to know people, getting to hear their stories, making conversation so I can figure out why did they choose that degree? What's their passion? What's their career path been like? What are their skills? What are they going to be working on? Just helping them discover it to figure out if it is a good fit, right? And I think I've gotten pretty good at it in terms of making people comfortable, but also really getting at the root of what they want to do and where they could be. And so that's probably my favorite part. I love it when we're about to launch things, right? When we're going to launch a new system and I get to train people and get people excited about using it. When I get to put together like an all company training session, like sometimes we have it and there's 240 people and I know they're in a Zoom and we're doing a training and trying to make it interactive and they're doing things and we're running all these chats and everything going on. And I'm like, yeah, this is totally great, right? Things that I don't love are things like job description reviews. I am really good at them and I can write them and I can post things online. And I just don't love them. If you have me writing up a job description for hours and hours and hours, it's not a great fit for me, but I do need to work it into my day. And that's the whole philosophy. There's a swallow the frog in the morning philosophy, like do the thing you want to do least, get it out of the way so you can get to the things you love. That's the kind of stuff I'll do in the morning, right? Also, I don't love it when we have to get to a discipline stage with a person, right? When we have to put someone on a performance improvement plan, chances are it means there was something that went wrong in their performance in the relationship. And by the time we have to write out that plan, we missed something in how to equip them. And it may have been the employee, it may have been the manager, it may have been a skill set that we just couldn't build. I would love to say all those work great. And sometimes they do. The employee gets the training, the attitude changes, the management relationship becomes really solid. And sometimes it doesn't. So that's honestly a hard part of it. But I would say my job is filled with a lot more fun things. I mean, there's a lot of I don't want to make it sound like all I do is talk to people all day. I have to write up a lot of different things, right? I heard some of your other career people talk about like charting and the background and the paperwork and all the compliance stuff. We need to do a lot of that stuff just to make sure we're not keeping it all in our head, but we're keeping it in a place that's shared. So I do really, I like also improving the process, making sure we are better matching people. I sometimes tell people recruiting is almost like online dating for jobs, which if any of the students are like, what is he really calling it on? It is. I mean, making LinkedIn, and I mean, we're like the eHarmony of the work world, right? We want to know about what is your background and what is our background, and is it a fit? It's not just getting anybody. It's got to be a fit for the people who come and join the company. And it's got to be a fit for the company too. So we have to really know, what does the company stand for, and what do the employees stand for, and is there really good, strong alignment for that?
Thank you for that. It's a great explanation. The students have a couple questions, and I wanted to hone in on one. You know, your career path looked like you went to Calvin, and maybe one of your first paid big boy jobs was right at Calvin. So they're wondering, you know, did you have anything challenging when you're trying to get some of those other jobs? They kind of like to know some of those transitions. What advice, you know, and what can they learn from some of your transitions of getting jobs?
Yeah, I should unpack that, because my college interns often ask this, like, what do we put on the resume? Should we only put like jobs about the career we want to get into? And so truth be told, I actually started working back when I was 14 years old at McDonald's. Best start job. They call it America's best first job. It's a best branding they can do. I loved it. So that tells you the age of me and Krista. We were allowed to work when we were 14. So anyhow, that was great. I could walk down the road. I could bike there. And then I got a factory job. So I think those are great jobs. They're about like getting to know people and who you're getting along with, doing things at a certain rate and a pace. And actually, that was a pretty funny job. I was supposed to be running a machine, and a lot of the product coming along had a lot of quality defects. And I kept bringing, I'm like, this is printed wrong. This is it. And we actually made school planners. And I was like, this isn't right. This isn't right. And they promoted me into a quality control job as a high schooler. So I'm going around talking to adults and saying, actually, this doesn't match the contract, or this doesn't match the work order. I learned a lot of people skills, like how do you talk to people who are your elders in a good way, which is really good for building HR. Third job I had back in high school, even before starting, was I worked on a farm. My grandparents own a farm, and I think it is one of the best type of jobs you can have because it builds up work ethic. So I think that's one of the big things, is every job you have is teaching you things that are building you. So I think one of the things for high schoolers too is get creative with your jobs. If you started a lawn care business, if you do a babysitting business, that shows entrepreneurship. We love it that people start their own business, they run it, they make do. I know it's a challenging year to work, right? But there are a lot of interesting jobs and opportunities out there. And if you can do that, make sure you keep building that and learn from it and say what you learned. One of the things we notice sometimes in interviews, if people get really negative about their past jobs or about their past employers, we're like, ooh, maybe you're just a negative person, right? I have nothing but positive stuff to say about McDonald's. Is it my calling for all of life? No, but was it a great foundation? Awesome, right? Do I want to work in a factory forever? No, but I learned so many good skills about process management, people, psychology, and it all really builds, and honestly, when you're a teacher, you often have other jobs too. So when I started as an 8th grade teacher, I was still working in summers like a lot of your teachers are, to be very kind to them. And this has been a tough year, right? But yeah, and then working through college, I worked in the admissions and financial aid office. I was a tour guide. That was a great, so I was a resident assistant. And those are things that we love to see on resumes too, because it shows you're leading in a residence hall, you're leading on the university, you're in a mentoring program, you're working with student academic services, you're helping tutor or counselor, you're a peer mentor. Those are all awesome things to start doing in high school and to do again in university. So you're really building that up.
Yeah, it's true that everything just keeps building. You learn every job, you learn a skill, you learn a talent, you have your opportunities broadened and what it can be, and just an encouragement to young people. As you hear Ryan talking, I mean, it just kept building. He kept adding things to his toolkit, and like he was describing, so many things he does in his job now were things that he had learned at a different point in time, and all kind of came together. And you could be encouraged if that's technically kind of how it works. I know my career path had that too. It's about 3 minutes to 4, Ryan. So we're in our kind of final stages here, because I know you have an appointment, but advice. We're going to end you with a final advice. If you were to look back through your experiences, is there anything that maybe you would do differently or that you want to encourage young people as you finish out? And then students, stay on because I want to give you a free resources.
Yeah, and I've got a slide for it too, because I just love to share slides and stuff like that. And I know it's coming. So
You're such a teacher. I love it. I love it.
So one of the things is I have some advice. Like, these are 3 great things I've just read. And if you have a chance, I love reading, I love podcasts, I love learning. And I highly recommend you do things for fun on your own that are not assigned by your teachers, right? It shows you have interest and drive. So one really good podcast, it's called Work Life by Adam Grant. I would listen to it. He's an organizational psychologist. It's fascinating. Like, he talks about building great teams and talks to Trevor Noah, and you learn about the Late Show. And it's just interesting peeks into businesses. So it's a total great way to kind of learn about it from the back end. I also love the book Range. We've been reading that at work. And I think sometimes there's this overemphasis to get really specialized and to know exactly what you want to do. This makes a really strong argument by why generalists will really triumph in that specialized world, and why we need to be broad people who have a lot of skills and then get some depth in an area and keep growing in that as you get farther in your career. You don't have to have that right away at the beginning of your career. And the final thing is finding that purpose. I've heard a lot of things. My kids, when they were doing their career paper, they're talking about like passion and vocation. I'm like, and I've heard some of the other career people do it. If you can find a job where you love it, the world needs it, you get paid for it, and you're good at it, that's the sweet spot, right? And I have been in ones where I love it and I'm great at it, but I'm not paid a lot for it, or the world needs it, I get paid for it, I'm great at it, but I don't love it, and it's like, okay, and they're still great things. I mean, I'm doing my profession or my vocation, or I'm going around mission, but when I find the job where it all comes together, that's the sweet spot of purpose, and so, and that only happens through building up jobs and experiences and starting your own businesses and whatever that may be. And it all kind of adds into like, keep on honing it. It's not a straight line to get to that purpose. It is an experience, and it keeps morphing and honing. Yeah.
That is pure gold, what you just said. Absolutely pure gold. I 100% second that. I love that graphic. I've used it before, but you guys, you have to understand it's experiences. I'll probably do that now, Ryan, when I share that in the future. It's experience, and you keep honing in to that sweet spot. I love it. Ryan, you were awesome. Students, stay on. I want to show you some resources, but Ryan, you've been a gift to us today, and I hope young people understand that there's so many cool behind the scene things that make businesses run as they explore what opportunities are out there. So we'll be in touch. I'll share some of their comments.
Awesome.
Brian,
Thank you,
after the fact.
Krista. Bye, team.
Thank
I'm going
you.
into an interview, so have a great rest of the day. Okay.
All right. Thank you. All right, students, stay with me here. I've got another resource to share with you, or an idea at least, and I think it'll be helpful as you start to figure out what you want to be when you grow up, which I hate that. That's not even a true statement. You want to figure out what kind of problem you want to solve, or who you are. But ONET online, I mentioned that the other day. If this is your first time to a career chat, write this down. It's a great website to do the actual research. Like, what is the typical day like? How much money do they make? Is this a growing field or not a growing field? When I put in recruiter, it wasn't actually in ONET, but these are some other jobs that have very similar qualities to a recruiter or a person in HR. So I love this kind of website because you can click on these and get more information, like what kind of technology will I be using? What kind of credentials, what kind of interests typically are for people with this kind of job? And this is just a tip of the iceberg. This is just one screenshot, but I love this tool. I also want to show you another thing that I do. Sometimes I'll go to Indeed.com and I'll put in, for today example, corporate recruiter. And when you put it into Indeed.com, which is a job search website, it's where employers put their job leads to try to find workers. The first thing that came up was a recruiting assistant. And as you can tell by the title, it's going to be more of an entry-level position. And when you click on opening like that, it's going to actually tell you what the job is all about, which is going to, again, educate you what some of these jobs are like. But it also lists the type of experience that they're looking for. So when you're in high school, you could actually look at some of these postings and say, okay, I could get into this with just a 2-year degree. I could be a customer service person, even at a McDonald's job, or if you work at a nursing home. That is customer service. That's actually preparing you for this entry-level position in a business. They want someone who has good attendance, dependability, organization. Those are things you could be developing now while you're in high school, right? Going to school, getting that good attendance record. And then as you read down a little further, you know that you need some computer experience in Microsoft Office. For some of you, you're doing a lot of texting, but you're not learning that program per se. So if you look at some of these job leads, it's actually giving the clues that you're going to need to do it. And I love it because you can kind of think of it as a staircase, right? But you're getting a little advanced view of what you need, and you can kind of back it out. What can I be doing now in high school to get there? And so I just wanted to kind of give you one of my life hacks as far as figuring some of this out, that if you kind of look ahead to some jobs, research them, and then even go to Indeed.com. Ryan was kind enough to share his email with us today. So if you liked what you heard from Ryan and you maybe would like a follow-up conversation, he's more than happy to do that with you. And so you would want to email him here, and I'll give you a minute to write this down, but you'll want to mention that you heard him at the career chat. Help give that context so he can make that connection, because he does talk to people every day. He said he had over 40 interviews just this week. So you'll want to mention the career chat. That's Struck-VanderHaak at progressiveae.com. And of course, you can always follow up with me, and I can always connect you with our role models if you have any follow-up questions. So I hope that this has been helpful to you as you continue just to learn about what's out there, as you're making some decisions for yourself and starting to take baby steps in high school to get to a plan upon graduation. We have 2 more mentors next week. So if you haven't registered already, do so. If you're a part of the Career Explorers program, if you're here just to watch a single career chat, that's great too. So that's all I have for today. So I hope that you guys have a really great day. Thanks so much. Great, Jordan. I see you want to be a basketball player. Selena, you're welcome. Bye, everybody.